What you see in the cover is the title of the doctoral thesis I've been working with. I defended recently, last month, and the title was Children's Emergent Chemistry in the Preschool. So the article that has been announced was part of my doctoral thesis, but here I'm going to tell you about the whole of the project, not only that paper. So first, I'm going to tell you about the background, of what was research saying before our study, and what was our aim, how we wanted to extend the research. And then I will tell you a little bit about the method and the results we achieved, so we can open up a discussion and you can ask what you wonder about it. So the first question that we wanted to check is, why is science important or interesting in the preschool stage? And there are many authors that advocate in favor of this, because it's been proved that first of all, children at the preschool age, they are naturally curious, they want to explore the world. So through science you can feed this curiosity that preschool children have. Through working with science, children can build their linguistic and conceptual foundations. They learn words, how to name plants or scientific phenomena. They also can enhance their social development when they help each other to do an experiment, or to learn to use a new object. And they can also, through this manipulation, develop fine motor skills, for example, the grip, or I don't know, balance of different objects. And they can also practice problem solving skills. If they come up with a question and they wonder why is it like that, and they explore and try to carry out a simple experiment, they develop problem solving skills. And finally, the author we are following, she advocates that if preschool children work with science in the preschool stage, it's more likely they will develop a future interest in science, because they enjoy it, and then they have like an emotional connection to it. So it's a positive motive for science in the future. However, there are very little.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Can we have just a quick one? Do you think we'll have fewer people thinking the world is still flat? You know, there are Facebook group that are convinced that the world is flat. If we did more in preschool level?
Good question. I mean, what I've been researching so far, it has surprised us in a positive sense that preschool children know more than we expect from them. So it's actually misconceptions that people develop as grown-ups when they read like wrong sources of information, as you are pointing out, like for example, thinking that the earth is flat. So if they get access to right information, it's more likely that they develop like how to say steady theories that are how to say scientifically based, because they follow logic instinctively, preschool children, so to speak. So yeah, there is hope that if they are in the right path, it's less likely that they come to believe these weird things that we have seen around the world. Mm-hmm. And as I was saying also, there's little literature in this research about how do preschool children develop scientific concepts, because obviously it's not within the curricula yet to work with scientific concepts at the preschool stage. They do that later on in the primary stage, in primary school education. However, if they are exposed, I don't know, maybe going to a museum or talking with their parents to scientific concepts, why not investigate what happens there? So that was a little bit our entry point, so to speak, filling that gap. And as I told you, my supervisor found the gap because specifically in Sweden, the preschool curriculum, although it doesn't say that children should learn scientific concepts per se, it has a goal that aims at preschool children being exposed or experiencing how to say phenomena related to science. And specifically, there's one quote from the preschool curricula that says, working with scientific, chemistry processes. So that's why we were puzzled, because me working as a preschool teacher in Sweden, it was very different from the experience in Spain, because the ratio is tremendously huge difference, because in Spain we have 25 children per one pedagogue. So it's almost impossible to aim to work with chemical processes at this stage, because it would be chaos and dangerous. But in Sweden, since they have 5 children per one pedagogue, the ratio is more how to say adequate to work with this kind of like more hands-on and activities in which you ask questions to the child in particular. So it's more inviting. And however, the preschool teachers don't know how to do it, because as preschool teachers in Sweden, they have very little training in science, so they lack the theoretical knowledge, and they don't feel comfortable or secure enough to transmit that knowledge into their children. So even if they come up with questions like, but what happened to the ice and when it melts, for example, they don't dare going into the changes of the state of the matter, and so they just leave the questions unanswered, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would think it doesn't have to be dangerous. You have water that can either be fluid or steam or ice, and that is quite complex to teach and understand, I suppose.
Precisely. And part of the project design was finding activities that had chemistry content but were preschool friendly, like safe. And you have tons of things, because in the kitchen there's already a lot going on, as you said, like, okay, water that boils, or food that changes the structure. Okay, the potatoes get softer when you cook them. So these are things that children, they see in their everyday life at home, for example, or also in the preschool when they play by themselves. And we can capture their sense of wonder, and yeah, guide them a little bit to see if they can come up with explanations on how and why did that happen. So there are tons of
It would be interesting to asking Italian children if they know really why pasta gets softer when it gets boiled. We all see it happening, but why is it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as simple as that, because we brought in many instruments, because, for example, we're just provoking to see what was coming out of them, because no one had attempted to study that phenomena. And they knew more than we expected, actually. For example, as you said, the example of pasta, we were trying to see if they could grasp the phenomena of filtering, and they connected the pasta still to the kitchen. They said, yeah, that's what mommy and daddy use when we cook pasta, and they connected it with a butterfly net, because they are outside in the forest and they have seen it. So the principle is the same, although the how to say, the holes are smaller. So they can extrapolate already at the age of 3. When we started with them, they were 3-year-olds, so pretty young, but still making a lot of connections. And obviously, if in the field of science in general, there are few studies about concept development in the preschool, in the field of chemistry, there was only one. So that's why we said, okay, we have something to get in here. Previous literature tell us that natural science in the preschool, we found like 5 subtopics. There are many studies that have looked into the teacher's role. As I told you, some preschool teachers, they feel insecure because they don't have the knowledge about science. And for example, Flair, she suggested that far more than the content knowledge about science, it's more important that the preschool teacher has a sciencing attitude. So even if they don't know the term or the process itself, if they invite the children to explore the things together and find out through the process where do they come up with, that's more productive than the preschool teacher knowing it by themselves really well. So that was very interesting too, that it's more of the, how to say, accompanying role of like, okay, wondering, asking questions and trying to help them find tools that they can come up with answers to their problems, for example. About the context of the child, as I told you, this project was only based in the preschool setting. However, there has been authors that have studied also the family context, because you can work with children when you go to the park or to a museum or to a library if there is an exhibition related to science. So that's also an input that preschool children get, not only from the preschool. And also in informal settings, as I said, it can be anywhere they meet a phenomena related to science, not only in informal learning, so to speak. And about pedagogical tools, there's a ton of materials here. So many people is developing not only apps, but also how to say, materials, not only physical, but also like ways to work through stories, through pictures. So there's a ton of material out there. However, not in the field of science, so we have to make it up, so to speak, create it ourselves. With children's subject-specific learning, in the fields of physics and biology, there is more literature. There have been many authors. It's obviously because biology is very accessible to the preschool children. When they are outside in a forest, they can see trees and insects and bugs. So it's easy that questions pop up like, but how does this animal live, or what do they do, or what happened to the tree in the winter, and things like that. And physics, because they are very active also, so whichever phenomena they experience through their body, like when they are sliding through the snow and a certain rock is not slippery, they see, okay, but if I tried with a different material, I go faster. Why do I break in here? The term of friction, for example. So that's very well researched. And about science learning in general, authors have suggested that preschool children, they pay attention to the living things, as we said in the field of biology, but they struggle to relate to the material world. So for example, rocks or air, things that don't have a life, they take it as granted it's there, and they don't wonder where does it come from, how does it transform as much. And in the field of chemistry, the struggle that older students meet is that it's a very abstract field, and in comparison to biology, where you can see how a plant grows, chemical chemical processes, you need to how to say, have mental constructions, because it's at the submicroscopic level. So the abstraction required for understanding this phenomena is very challenging for a preschool child. However, they showed us that they can more than we would expect, and you will see now in the results. So our aim was to explore how the scientific concepts emerged and developed in this group of preschool children. And we use the term emergent science because we cannot call it science per se, because it's their first approach to it, and sometimes they might not use the right terms, or they might have misconceptions, but we didn't do any judgment about the correctness of their how to say, statements. We just explored what came up of these explorations, and we wanted to see how far could they get in this emergence. So the method that we followed was we followed a group of 9 children over 2 years. They were 3 years old at the beginning of the project. And then you see on the left side, the yellow circle, that was the core concept that we wanted to achieve with the preschool children, the concept of small. Because talking with my supervisor, who is a chemist, we thought if we want something that the preschool children get from this project is to challenge their knowledge of small. Because when we asked them at the beginning of the project what was the smallest thing they could think of, they said baby insects. Because that was the only thing they had seen, because they couldn't imagine anything smaller than that. However, I also want to point that unfortunately Corona has done a lot of inconvenience, but in this sense, it helped us also make them wonder about smaller things, because all of the children were very aware that it's very important to wash your hands, because there are tiny things called bacteria that can make you sick. So we don't know how small they think they are, but they know that there's something that you cannot see but affects you. So that was
You could say that Corona made it actually kind of distorted your study a bit, because it made it more
yes,
more likely for them to understand the concept of small.
yes, absolutely. So we have to acknowledge this
Yeah, yeah.
because it has happened.
I remember. I think it was 8 or 9 years ago, um, in the Copenhagen Zoo. Uh, um, they what do you call it? They killed a giraffe and cut it open in front of school kids. And they did it because the giraffe didn't fit into the breeding the plans so it was perfectly okay to do so, you could say. And it was that was concept where something was alive, rather big, and they could see, the neck and everything. So I can understand how that is easy to understand for school kids, and might seem a bit, also that that it's not a Disney world we live in, that animals and people die eventually. Um, but this concept of small, so that is like you could call that an extra challenge into the study that you put in. Like it makes it even more difficult than simply helping school children understand the concept of biology, but biology when it then comes down to the smallest things that we can't see.
Exactly. So yeah, but not only how to say a challenge, but actually it proved to be helpful, because they connected to it. But of course, let's say if someone had conducted a study pre-corona stage, then probably it wouldn't have shown up, unless because some of the children knew already, because this McHook, in English it's like the stomach flu. So they have this concept, but with Corona, everybody, all the children in all the preschools. And we used for our theoretical framework emergent science skills in general, not only in the field of chemistry that Johnston talked about, and the educational experiment from Hedegaard, and the conceptual play model from Flair, and the scaffolding strategies from Mesak. And this kind of snake up and down, it just shows that we did not plan from the very first moment the whole project, but instead we were like doing trial and error, because we poked them with a question, but then it was unpredictable how far would they get. So once we had implemented the session, then we decided where to go next. Like, do we need to revisit? Do we need to present it in a different way? So that's why this iterative process of readjusting the activities on the go.
May I just ask, did the children come from different social backgrounds and different areas of Sweden? Because I think maybe there could be some influence on the results if it's only 9 children instead of 90 or 900.
Yeah, definitely. And that was part of the critique that I got in my defense. They said, but it's such a small sample that you cannot generalize the results. And I say, I'm totally aware, and that's a limitation of this study. But since it was just a pilot study, we made it qualitative, like going in depth with the children's impressions, but we don't have a broad sample, unfortunately, because it was only myself collecting the data and we couldn't reach. But definitely, and one of the ideas we want to develop is like comparing also children from different countries, because coming from a different country, from Sweden, and I have the suspicion that Spanish children probably are not so exposed, or don't have so much experience with the snow and melting process, because the weather is very rare that we get snow down there. So whereas in Sweden it's a common reality that they see it every winter. So these factors play a role, definitely. And let's go to the next one. So yeah, here, just to give you a hint of how did we go, the outer ring, the blue one, shows the emergent science skills that an author presented, and she said that anyone working with science needs to be proficient with these skills. You need to be good observing, classifying, and communicating. And there are also like higher order skills like planning, predicting, and we didn't reach that level yet with the children, but also scientists, grown-ups, they need to master them. And then in the middle circle, the lower part, are the pedagogical tools that we used from like daily practice from preschools, like using drama, drawing, flashcards, video animations, and experiments. And on the top part, you see chemistry practical methods, as we said, that are appropriate to work with preschool children, that there are no risks, no dangers involved. So for example, we use the magnifying glass, portable microscopes. We tried grinding, dissolving, and filtering. So really basic stuff that they do spontaneously in their free play. And for the analysis, we use the software ELAM, which allows you to time align the video sequence with the categories of analysis. So you can see like what every child is saying and see, okay, does it correlate? Do they see it at the same time? How do they react to each intervention? So it's really good software, but very time consuming, because you need to introduce every layer, and the sequences like go to milliseconds. So huge work there. And then we checked if the conceptual play and quality markers were fulfilled, because we were following a model. So we wanted to make sure that children used affective imagination, that they were going in and out of imagination, that the preschool teacher was using a narrative role and concepts based in science, and so. And we also checked the focus of the children, because if we fulfill the criteria, which we did, but children were not interested or didn't enjoy the activities, what was the point of that? That was a success, a failure, so to speak. But the results showed here, for example, in the focus graphs, the green sections is when children were actively engaged in the activity, participating and involved doing things or asking questions. So it was most of the time. So we were satisfied in that sense. And the play-based quality markers, again, they were all present during the activities. In the second paper that I published, we followed up the concept of small to see how it developed. And as I told you, the starting point, the smallest thing they knew were baby bugs. So then we said, how about breaking down things so that they can come to the realization that whatever you get, is it something alive like a leaf from a plant, or something not alive like a rock, you can break it down into smaller pieces. And then they came down to the level of powder. So that was a bit smaller than baby bags. And since they didn't go further than that, we decided to introduce the video animations. And with the video animations of daily objects like a butterfly or a leaf from a tree, zooming in down to the submicroscopical level, then children started talking, okay, it looks like a meatball. They called the atoms at first, they were meatballs to them, but then they realized, but it's not a meatball, it just looks like that because it's something in the leaf. So at some in their own level at some point they started making this connection, and it was thanks to the video animations that they reached that. So, and that's how to say supported by Vygotsky's theory, the one we followed, because he says that everything the imagination creates is always based on elements taken from reality, from a person's previous experience. And obviously, if children had no experience with atoms, how could they come up with it? They cannot spontaneously create that idea. So they needed some kind of experience, and we provided them through the video animations, seeing that if you could get smaller and get into a leaf, you would see that it's made out of these small balls that are atoms. Mm-hmm. The third paper, we looked at the motivating conditions. As we said earlier on, there is an author that says that if children are exposed to science in the preschool stage, it's more likely that they will develop a future interest. So this, looking at the motivating conditions, we analyzed the sequences of the activities and checked what were they motivated, what was appealing to them. And from the activities, they loved the king, which was the background story. Every day the king had a mission. Today we're going to filter this, or today we're going to do that. Because play-based learning, you need to have a narrative that is like a thread that they revisit. It's not like random activities, but they want to do it because they feel appealed to help the king, the protagonist. And birthday parties and cakes, so things they are in their everyday life. So that created a positive experience to them. And related to science, they loved the magnifying glass and the magnifying effect, filtering and mixing, the things we did, and they were interested by themselves in the activity. They didn't need the background story. Our suggestion is that even if we didn't have presented the story that he has this mission, just by giving them a magnifying glass, they were puzzled, like, "Oh, your eye looks bigger now." So they really like, as we said, testing and seeing what's going on. So that was really interesting for them. So at the beginning of the intervention, where they were 3 years old, their leading motif was more like competing, like, but it's my turn, or I'm bigger than you, or always the me, the self. Whereas at the end of the intervention, they were more into collaboration. They were helping each other out, respecting the turns, and building on the narrative of their partners. And the emotions related to science, they developed as positive expectations, because whenever I came into the preschool, they were like, "Oh, we're going to the science." So they were looking forward because they knew they were going to have fun. So that was also positive.
It seems like you created some better world citizens. If they go to collaboration, it seems like you made the kids more better world citizens simply.
Yeah, I mean, how to say, we cannot claim that it was the interventions, how to say, role that only, because developmental psychologists, they say that the nature of the child is developed in this sense. So at first, children need, when they are babies, they need to explore the physical world because it's new to them. They don't know gravity and things like that, so they are like more into the objects. But later on, when they are aware, okay, I'm here, and if I do this to this object, it happens, that they become aware, they get agency, like I can make things happen. Then they start seeing also someone else's perspective, like, okay, if they do this, that affects me. So then getting this sense of the other. So this is the good line of development, so to speak. So even if they hadn't had this intervention, they would eventually get there. But we observed that during our intervention, and that's good that they develop in that sense. And yeah, the paper that has been published here, it presented 3 examples, and one of them was when we dissolved sugar into water. And the children, first, when we asked them what happened to the sugar, they said that it disappeared, because when you stir with the spoon, they don't see it anymore. But then we asked them to taste it. And when they took the water and felt that it tasted sweet, then they connected to the sugar. And then they said, okay, even if I don't see it, it has to be in there because it tastes like sweet, like sugar. So they couldn't explain how, but they said that the sugar was still there, that it went in there, even if they cannot see it. So that was like aha moment for them, so to speak. The example of the concentrations was when we had to, the king was sick and we had to make some medicine for him. So we took juice, strawberry juice, and they poured different amounts in 3 glasses. They could choose how many cups they could pour. And then even if they were 3-year-olds, they could associate the amount of juice, how dark the liquid saw, and how sweet it tasted. So they had the concept of concentration, because they knew that the more juice you pour, the darker it gets and the sweeter it tastes. So because we asked them to classify, and they did it straight away without any problem, all of them. So that was also, even if they don't have the concept, they understand what's going on, how it affects. And the last example I wanted to share with you was about the representations, because later on, that was in year 2, they were 5-year-olds already, not 3. And we used these atomic models. So we used plastic balls. I don't have one here right now, but okay, you see the picture. So you represent the atoms of oxygen, hydrogen, or carbon, and you can build molecules with them, because there are many animations that's already there from preschool in Sweden that work with the concept of water molecule. Because as we said, if you get the snow, the water, and the ice, you can see the changes in the state of matter, and they can associate that to what happens to the water molecules. When it's solid, they are next to each other. It's like a fixed structure. When you apply some heat, they start vibrating, so it turns into a liquid. And then if you apply even more heat, then it breaks the binding, the bond between the molecules, and then it gets into a gas form. So they could associate their molecular model with the real product. So for example, one child, when we were talking about molecules in the milk, we said that there was one named lactose, because some children are lactose intolerant. And then they were puzzled, because they said, but if the lactose molecule, that's the model you have, is red, black, and white, but the milk is only white. So they knew that they were related somehow, but it didn't look the same. And that's the beauty of the representation, the symbol. So they were starting to make connections there also. So yeah, I've extended myself very much, but it's nice that we had some discussion and it was more, how to say, interactive. But yeah, I think we can skip the rest because it's been so far. But yeah, just any questions that you have,
Oh,
or
that's a lot of stuff here. Let me just ask. So you guys in the audience, if you have questions, please just unmute yourself and or let me see first if anyone have. You can raise your hand, so we're not all speaking in the same time. But you're also welcome to.
Can I make the first question?
Yes, I can see. Yes, we have Nicolaus.
Hello.
Yeah.
Should I introduce myself first?
Yes, you're welcome. Please.
Yeah. So I'm also a PhD student in the same sector as Clara. I am in.
I can see you have the same thing behind you, so it looked suspicious, like you were in the same institution. Yeah.
We are actually colleagues with Clara, so I'm
Excellent. Excellent.
I had the opportunity to learn about her work in the past. So I am also a PhD student in science didactics. My question is that how could we interpret these results in the context of educational excellence? That meaning that in the process of creating better educational contexts and creating more educational excellence. Could we say that these interventions could be formalized in an educational protocol that would create less dependent and more autonomous children? Thank you.
well, that's a very interesting question, and yeah, how to say, here I have like a double persona because I worked as a preschool teacher myself, but now I have the researcher's role. So from the scientific field, I can only say what the data has shown. But as a preschool teacher myself, I would say that I believe this intervention, in the sense that you pointed, does go aligned with excellent education, in the sense that it challenges the norm, what's being done right now. So it pushes the boundaries like one step further, so to speak. So I do believe it's how to say, interesting to broaden the knowledge, because preschool children have huge potential, but of course also acknowledging the role of the preschool teacher, that they need to have the right how to say, resources again, because it requires time to prepare these kind of activities, and you need to have like small groups, otherwise it gets really messy and you don't have the time to like discuss which each of the individuals, I would remark also. But if the setting is adequate, like the conditions are allowing it, I think it's really positive that, as you said, children are given the space to ask the questions they wonder, they can try themselves, and they can come up with their own explanations. I don't know if anyone wants to add.
I can see we have participants. I can recognize a bit from the names. Yes, Jens, I see you. But I would just like to see, we have the creative economy from Bangladesh. We have Sevay from Turkey. I can see on the names that we also have a couple of participants from Nigeria. So if any of you guys have a take on also Rosakepia Estela. So if any of you have any comments that maybe relate to this is, I think it's quite different from being a Nordic school system and then maybe other kind of school systems, whether you can test this. But Jens, you have a question.
Yes, no, I found that extremely interesting. So thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask you, I mean, lots of this could also be done in a family context. You said that yourself in passing. Do you know of any kits on the market that I can buy, or parents can buy for different. I go and buy Lego for 3 or 4 year olds, and then there are Lego for 5, 6 years old. Could one not imagine there would be products on the market for science teaching in the family context? We are close to Christmas, so why not? So I'm just asking, have you seen or do you know of any such products on the market that would exactly address the various experiments that are interesting and visually important for children?
Excellent question, Jens.
Yeah, really good. And as part of the previous literature research, we did a search on that, and we found that there was a collection in Sweden with, it's a book about a dragon called Greta, I think, and then she is working with chemistry. So there were some things, but as you said, not for the preschool setting, so we had to do it ourselves, but for the family setting. So you can do it one by one, the parents with their child, and you read the story, and then you do the experiment related to that principle. So it's, how to say, very well documented, the pedagogical information, like which instruments or material do you need, what's the aim of the activity. So it's very well documented. So I am going to look for the link, and I can share it here. So if you want to get that.
Excellent. Meanwhile, I also would like to ask you, Clara, you said that you developed your own pedagogical tools, and those own pedagogical tools, I find it a pity if they just end up in a PhD. This is why we're doing these CBN Science webinars. Wouldn't it be interesting to link up with a startup, maybe like Professor Y that works with virtual reality and chemistry and physics, so that the tools that you have developed can actually come to life?
Wow, that would be amazing. Because I had to say, I found a limitation in my role because I lack the technical background. So if someone from the IT world, like for example, graphic designers or like programmers, they can create animations, because we saw that it was a way in that helps the children starting wonder about the submicroscopic level. I would be more than happy to collaborate with them, because it's, how to say, it's promising, this way, so to speak.
So while you look for the link, otherwise we can also send the link to the group that participated afterwards. I know also that Eduardo Montenegro has a question for you. Eduardo is our head of the Play and Learn initiative. That's, of course, also science, but it's very much related to investors and startups and trying to really develop this field so that you can play yourself to knowledge on chemistry, geography, math, etc. Eduardo.
So, Clara, I have a news and a question for you. The good news is that on Tuesday, we will host Kid Science, which teaches STEM to kids in kindergartens. And we will immediately link you to them, because this could be really a good connection. And so you're invited. And my question is, it looks like chemistry and STEM are better and better taught by parents and by business to parents edtech solutions rather than primary schools. So throughout the world. So my question is, what can we learn from Sweden and the Nordics in terms of teaching STEM to kids? Since I find interesting but relatively weird that they are learning STEM from apps and from parents and not that much from schools.
Wow, first, thanks for the invitation. It sounds like a good collaboration on Tuesday. And second, your question, yeah, I think it's, as we said, since we are, how to say, stretching the boundaries of preschool education, and it's a new phenomena. The education system hasn't developed strategies yet. So it's more from the entrepreneurs or people that startups that are developing new stuff. It's such a recent phenomena that we don't have the tools yet. So we need to create them, so to speak. So it's more of the own initiative of parents that go out on the net and they see like apps or I don't know, materials that they can use with their children, because it's a lot of like self-taught, so to speak, because maybe you don't have the scientific knowledge, but there are so many tutorials and information out there on the net that if you can find something, then it's very exciting to share that with the children. So yeah, how to say, we still have a lot to do, even if, how to say, compared to Spain, it has gone further in enlarging the preschool education boundaries. We don't have much material, so we need to go and borrow from software developers or people who's doing like cutting edge things that help us, because we are not talking about formal education, like, okay, what does a textbook say about this? We are talking about more of like firsthand experiences. And that's why I think, Rasmus, it was very interesting what you said about virtual reality, because I definitely believe that it would help the preschool children to think about the submicroscopic world if they can like pretend to go into it and see it, because it's such a huge gap in the abstraction step they need to take. So if they can travel it somehow using video animations, it would help them a lot, actually.
We're reaching the end of this webinar on scientific research in the culture and creative industries, and in this case, play and learn. And I feel that we have so much more to talk about. So I just have two small questions before we end. Clara, when we look for studies like this, we usually have to know a student that has access to research databases and hope that they can find it. But is it possible, that's my first question, to make your study maybe in a resume more accessible to the general public? And then my next question is, what's next? What's next for you in your studies? And now you need to unmute.
How to say, I think it's a pity, actually, because when we discussed the implications of this thesis with the defense committee, they said that it would be really interesting for preschool teachers as an inspiration, so they can do it themselves, but also not only for teachers, but also for parents, as you showed interest. So yeah, maybe a short article more like for the general public, not only in academia, like, okay, you need to go to a database. And so yeah, that would be really interesting too. And the next step, well, answering to the small sample critique, we are conducting the same project with more children now. We are taking a bigger sample. That's why Nikos is helping us, because we need more hands to collect data. So we are taking 40 children this time. Mm-hmm.
And they're all Swedish.
Yes, because now we cannot travel, so we have to take like a national sample. But in the beginning, we wanted to do like a comparison between Spain, Greece, and Sweden, which would be interesting to see if the same results apply, or if there are differences, why and why not. So, but due to Corona, we cannot fly home.
So yes. So thank you, everyone, and thank you especially to you, Clara Vidal Carulla from Linnaeus University, showing us your latest results when it comes to play and learn. And it's really encouraging and really, really interesting. I would like to spend a couple more hours here, but we usually start and end on time. Here at the end, I would just like to remind you that next week we have, first of all, the Play and Learn conference or webinar on the 10th of November, where it's not only about science, but I'm sure there will also be something about that, but it will be startups pitching, there will be investors, there will be experts, and there will be some people that have launched great educational experiments, such as Peter Westerbacher. I don't know if you know, but actually Angry Birds was launched in the International Space Station by a NASA astronaut, because Angry Birds was actually about teaching the concepts, the physical concepts to kids when you launch these Angry Birds against the pigs that have stolen their eggs. So that was actually a Play and Learn initiative originally. He will also be so tune in next Tuesday. Next Thursday, we're also going to have a Creative Business Network science webinar. This time it's about the culture and creative industries in Africa, with a special focus on South Africa by a researcher, a scientist from Nigeria, but working out of a study in South Africa. And just in general, go to cbnet.com. That's where we have most of our information, Creative Business Network. And if you want to join the network as such, as an individual, you go to www. and then this is .cbnet.com. So our network, where everyone is active and can show their faces and interact, that is at thisis.cbnet.com. And our general information is on just cbnet.com. So all from me, and thanks again. Gracias muchos, Clara. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. See you, if not before, next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.